Hey, what's up, family? Hope you're having a good day. If you didn't have a good day, just know that the worst is behind you, because tomorrow's yet to be manifested, because we create it with our thoughts and intentions. So, as you can see, definitely in a different environment than what I'm accustomed to. So, I'm definitely somebody who likes to have things perfect, I guess, before I embark on a new adventure or a new mission. And I'm definitely stepping outside of my element in this sense, because I can't get outside. I love being outside in nature. So my thought process is, especially right now in winter, and the pain if you're on the East Coast with all of the recent snow and ice and stuff that we've gotten, that you really can't make it outside, at least unless you're going snowboarding or skiing or sledding or something like that. But if you're really just kind of getting out there, wanting to get out there to connect with nature, unfortunately, there's not very many opportunities. So my thought process was, I have a lot of plants, so why not create a space in my home that feels like nature, or at least as close as much like nature as possible. That way, whenever I do feel that longing or that calling to kind of connect with nature, I do have a place that I can go to. Obviously, it's not touching real grass, but in essence, it is touching grass from the standpoint that you're at least connected and surrounded by Mother Nature. So, and that's something that I was working at doing, and I told myself that I was going to do before I actually started recording in my home. So I've went through an interesting experience in the past couple of weeks, and I've been feeling kind of called to record a message, or at least document it. And so today I was working and just felt the call just to kind of sit down and record a message, especially kind of what I was going through, what I've experienced the past couple of weeks, because it really was, in my opinion, profound, and it was a big turning point for me. And so I know at some point you all are kind of gonna go through the similar experiences or something along those same lines. So really just documenting kind of what I went through, and in that moment, what I was thinking and what helped me kind of come out of it. So I've been a serial entrepreneur for the most part of my life. I've basically I have started things in the pursuit of finding something to trying to think of the right word. Not necessarily subsidize. Well, I guess maybe you can say that, but basically something that would allow me to step out of the 9-to-5 rule and step more into what I feel like is my purpose, which is, having the time to create these videos, go on adventures, and really experience life. So that way I can experience the positive and negative side of certain things and utilize that energy to transmute, and then come here to talk about it. So the past couple of weeks have really been big for me, is because as I've been going through the healing journey, I've been looking at my life, especially trying to really focus in and hone in on creating a life outside of my 9-to-5. So I had ideas as far as what that looked like, but I'm starting to get to the point where I'm looking at it and kind of listing those things out that I've been doing and I've pursued, and what hasn't been working. Because the way that I'm looking at things now is, if I try and pursue something or go after something, but I'm met with a lot of resistance, then if that's something that's not aligned for me, and the old Brandon would have basically forced the issue and dove head first into it and forced the issue. And that's why a lot of my lessons, I would say, have definitely been more of the, I don't want to say painful side, but I would say the advanced side, because it's almost like my spirit team is like, okay, we don't want you to go down this path, but you're so insistent that you want to go down this path that, okay, we're going to allow you to go down this path. But when you hit this lesson, when you go through things, just remember we tried to stop you. And so that way you basically start to learn, I guess in their hopes, that I will learn that when I face resistance, that I will use that as an indication that I need to stop and pump my brakes and reevaluate the situation. So I've talked about how I've gone through a change in my career. So that change in my career involved me giving up a work vehicle. So I had a vehicle that my company provided for me that I drove around. So it was a nice benefit, and was able to utilize it and stuff. So, but now that I've changed positions, I no longer have access to that vehicle. So because I do like to travel a little bit, I have other vehicles that I can utilize, but they do have some miles on them, or they're vehicles that I don't want to put miles on. So I was like, okay, let me go ahead and let me purchase a vehicle that I can use to travel with, but also, well, mainly the idea was to really travel on. I always had an idea of starting like a Toro business once I really found that and realized that it was a thing. So I noticed that as I started trying to pursue this vehicle and get it, that I was encountering resistance. I called this credit union that I had worked with and had purchased my previous vehicle with, and tried to have them to run my credit. And for some reason, they were coming back and they were like, well, Brandon, for some reason, the credit bureaus aren't giving us a copy of your credit report. It's as if your credit doesn't exist, which sounded very weird to me. I went through the hurdles of, calling the credit bureau, being on the phone with them for a couple of hours, trying to figure out what's going on, falling into the same cycle that I was used to doing of, hey, I'm meeting resistance. I'm a type of person that doesn't give up. I persevere. So this is my indication to keep charging forward, to not let anything stop me. But in this moment, I recognized that it wasn't aligned for me, or that the reason I was running into resistance was because this particular path that I was trying to take wasn't aligned for me. So I've been getting into divination and stuff, and I have my very first set of cards that I got was actually kind of given to me by the universe, so to speak. So I'll have to go, that's a whole nother story. So, but after that set of oracle decks was basically gifted to me by the universe, I went out and I purchased my own Rider-Waite tarot deck. And so I feel called to utilize them, but the lazy part of me kind of gets the better half of me to where I really don't tap into them like I should. But in this particular moment, I felt guided to tap into the tarot. So I was like, you know what, let me find out what's going on, because I feel like this is a good step for me. I'm financially secure, financially viable to make that move, or at least make the money to make that move. So let me see what's going on. So I started pulling cards. And in essence, it came back to say that that this is being blocked, in essence, because I'm trying to rush into the scenario. I'm not using that Aquarian energy, so to speak. I'm using that Aries energy to really rush into something because it's what I want in that moment, and not really thinking it through. So what I did is I took, I'm learning some things for work. So I have anybody that's been in kind of like a corporate or business environment, those big easel pieces of paper that you can get when you go in there, you're having a meeting or something, and people are writing up on those big giant pieces of paper. So I have some of that paper because I'm studying some other things for work. So I took one of those pieces of paper and I wrote down and I utilized that piece of paper to gather my thoughts and to put a plan of action together, an action plan together. And what I did is I wrote initially what my objective was with wanting to purchase this vehicle, and what my intent was behind purchasing the vehicle, and then what my objective was behind purchasing the vehicle, to tie it back into my intent. And I went through the entire process from the purchase price, the potential purchase price of the vehicle, the insurance, the monthly car payments, the insurance company I would want to go with, the tax process, because one of the reasons I wanted to purchase the vehicle was because I wanted to leverage some of the tax rules that were in place for 2025 to help lower my taxes basically at the end of the year. So just with the tax bracket I'm in, just looking to lower that. So saying all that to say that I went through this whole entire process, and once I started doing that, I noticed a different path opened up for me. And I started going down that path, and everything basically all the resistance that I was facing and going through in the previous path was all gone. It was in essence like this particular path that was shown to me that I was going down now was so easy that I really didn't even have to do anything. I provided my information. I was like, hey, this is the vehicle I wanted to buy. They asked me how much money I made. I told them. They didn't even verify my information. They kind of pulled up and whatnot because, my family has a history with the particular bank that I went through. So, it's just like a lot of things that lined up as if the universe was behind me to say, yes, Brandon, this is the path that you should go down in order to pursue this dream and this intent. Because my intent was I was asking not necessarily asking the universe, I was just saying that my intent behind purchasing this vehicle was to prove to myself that I could run a business, that I could run a Turo business and maintain it and handle everything that came along with it. So that was my aim. So I got the vehicle right a couple of days before Christmas. So fast forward between Christmas and now that I've officially got it on Turo and have it listed. And actually, right now, there's a family that's on a ski trip right now that actually rented the vehicle for their vacation. So the main purpose of this, I would say, is just the experience that I went through leading up to it and how it really taught me some things about myself. So there were some things that I needed to do before the rental took place. But every time I went through it, I told myself, hey, I have plenty of time to do it. Guess what happened? The day before the rental, or a couple of days before the rental was supposed to take off, there were some things that I needed to do that I had been putting off. And guess what? I no longer had time to do. So, it caused me to have to scramble around to find workarounds, I guess you could say, for the things that I didn't take care of in that particular moment. So it was already a lot of anxiety going on in that moment because, one, I recognized that I did drop the ball on the things that I needed to do that I didn't do. So that was one lesson. So going forward, that taught me that whenever I recognize that there's something that I need to do in the moment, no longer saying, well, hey, I have time. If I'm looking at it in that moment, then that means that it's important for me to do. So let me go ahead and follow through with it. So that was one lesson. But I would say the biggest thing was, as this was something, I've started other businesses and attempted to start other businesses before and gave them my all. And a lot of them didn't come to fruition, but I've never had the experience that I've had in this particular moment. And I have theories as far as why it happened, but in essence what happened is a week or two before the rental would take place, before I would really have to step outside of my comfort zone, because the vehicle that I purchased was like a $60,000 vehicle. It was a nice vehicle, and everybody was telling me that I'm basically crazy, or, there's no way that they would they would put this type of vehicle out there for people to rent and people to utilize. But I thought back to my original intention on this vehicle, and what did I say? I said, to the universe, my intent with getting this vehicle is to prove to myself that I can do this, that I can run a Turo business, I can manage a vehicle, and all the things that come along with it. So, I appreciate everybody for their feedback. There was various things along the way that I asked them for their input on, but I always kept that intent in my mind that this is something that I'm doing for myself to prove to myself that I can do it. You will hear from time to time that people who are too afraid to do things for themselves, they will often tell you that you can't do things because they're too afraid to do them themselves, and they don't want you to do it, because if you do it, then it makes them feel some kind of way about them not doing it themselves. So I put all that in the back of my mind. I appreciate it, and I thank them for their advice and took it with a grain of salt. But the one thing that really impacted me and I really felt was weird was that leading up to the first couple of weeks, I really noticed it with tarot. So I don't look at tarot from a standpoint of telling me how to live my life, but it's a standpoint of, I guess, checkpoints to see if certain things that I've navigated in my life, if it resonates or it sounds similar. And I don't even really feel like I'm articulating it correctly in that moment. So, but in essence, I noticed that as I started to watch tarot readings, it was as if something shifted in my mentality to where it felt like I was the person being talked about in the opposing energy of all of these tarot readings for the past week or two. So it was like as if it's talking about it's talking about the dynamic between me and somebody else, but there's somebody else there's a toxic person that's in that relationship or in that dynamic. Then it was as if something was trying to get me to look at myself as if I was the toxic person in every single tarot reading. So it was like something was trying to get me to look down on myself every single time. So there were some things in the tarot readings that resonated with me. There were some parts of the tarot readings that resonated with my old self before I started healing, and that had I not got on the healing path, I would have embodied those energies, because I did embody those energies in the past. And when I think back on it, that was the part of it that was really brilliant, I guess, is because it was playing on parts of me that I had healed, but it was as if it was trying to reflect those parts back to me to see if those were still active triggers within me. So I say all that to say, as I got closer to the day where I had to actually turn the keys over to the person that was going to rent the vehicle, there was a lot of things going through my head, and it was all negative. You know, I got the picture of the person that was supposed to rent the car, and I wanted to critique that, and wanted to stereotype, and I'm like, okay, I don't want anybody to stereotype me, so why am I stereotyping somebody else? What if they do this? What if they do that? What if they do this? What if they do that? Everybody else is in my ear telling me, Brandon, you shouldn't do this. Well, Brandon, if I was in your position, there's no way I would do this. It was just like everybody and anything negative that could potentially enter into my thought, my conscious awareness did. And it came a point to where it was just like, it was so much going on, and I knew that I was second guessing myself, but I still took a little bit of comfort in the words of others, basically confirming the fears and stuff that I had, because ultimately I was stepping outside of my comfort zone. It was something that I didn't want to do, but it was something that I knew that I had to do, because if you're anybody that's a business owner that is looking to start a business or do anything outside of a 9-to-5, you know that there's no reward without any risk. So I knew that I needed to take the risk. In the grand scheme of things, yes, there are some bad apples that do impact people on Turo, but for the grand scheme of things, it's not a bad business model, and I had to trust that. So there came a point where I needed to go get, one of the things I needed to do was go get the car washed. And all the car washes around where I was at was open. So I was like, okay, let me go ahead, and where I needed to drop the car off for the renter to pick it up was about 30 minutes away. So I was like, okay, car washes around me. Let me go ahead and drive this 30 minutes. Let me get into the area where I need to drop it off at, because I didn't want to wash it and then drive on the roads with all the salt and get it dirty again. So I get to the area expecting the car washes to be open because they were open in my area. I get up there, the car washes are, I buy a car wash before I even get to the area, because the car wash is here. excuse me, you can buy a car wash like online, and then when you get there, they scan a code and it allows you access to whatever car wash you're going to. So before I even got to the car wash, I bought it. I bought the best one because I obviously wanted the car to look good. You know, I'm all happy-go-lucky. Well, I should say happy-go-lucky, because the other thing is my Apple CarPlay and my charger in that car have been working flawless, no issues. But when I got in the car, for whatever reason, my charger wasn't working, the Apple CarPlay wasn't working. It was just all these different things that was going wrong. And I'm thinking to myself, of all the days these things could go wrong, like, why go wrong today? And I say all that to say that when I bought the car wash, I was down the road from it. So I missed my turn. I turned around, went to the car wash, pulled up to it, and guess what? The car wash was closed. So I'm like, Jesus, okay. You know, all right, like, what's going on? So what was one of my intents when I wrote out for this car what I wanted? I said my intent was I wanted this vehicle to prove that I could handle a Turo business and everything that came along with it. So what came along with it in this particular moment? I needed to wash the vehicle, but the car wash was closed. Was I going to basically lose my cool? Was I going to go into a place of woe is me, everything is going wrong? Or was I going to stay in my empowered state that I had now developed and found within myself? Not gonna lie, and I've said before, that shadow place of feeling sorry, just being like, you know what, F it. Let me go ahead and just cancel this renter. Let me just keep this car. Let me repurpose it for something else. All those thoughts went through my mind, but I was like, you know what, Brandon? You can do this. You've been through worse. Let's keep pushing. And I pulled off to the side. I didn't completely pull away from the car wash, but I pulled a little bit enough around the corner that I was safe to get on my phone and try and find another car wash. Because in essence, what I was going to do is I was going to find another car wash and buy another package, because even though I bought that one and I didn't use it in that moment, I still could use it at any date and time. So I was like, okay, yes, I spent the money on this car wash that I can't use right now, but at least this car wash is only 8 minutes from where I drop a vehicle. So in the future, I'm sure that I will need a car wash, so I can use this one. So let me just chalk it up to what it is, find another car wash, get it washed, and still move forward. Family, tell me why, as I was sitting there after having that realization, patiently scrolling through and looking for additional car washes to go to, I look out the side and all of a sudden, tell me why they opened the car wash. The same car wash that was closed that I couldn't go to, that in essence, the old me would have panicked and got mad, got frustrated, all of a sudden opened up. So guess what I did? I thanked the universe and I said, basically, thank you, for opening this up, because I felt like in hindsight now that was a test. Had I truly healed that side of me, or was I saying that I had healed that side of me in words only? But when the rubber meets the road, as the old saying goes, when it came time for me to actually prove that and show that, was I going to step up to the plate and be true to myself? So as frustrating as initially was, I've stayed true to myself, and I moved on to try and find another car wash. It opened. I turned around. I went in, got my car wash. Everything else proceeded perfectly from that standpoint. And I just remember at a certain point saying to myself, this is a trickster energy. Something is going on right now in me that's trying to trick me. And not from a standpoint of getting me to fail, but like I said earlier, trickster energies, in my opinion, I'm not going to say all of them because I don't know all the energies. I'm learning about all this stuff, but I'm being called, feel like, to learn about the Orishas and the various ones there. So I know that there's a trickster spirit on the Orishas, or there's an Orisha trickster spirit, and I want to say his name is Eshu. But in essence, it's not that he's tricking you to deceive you, but he's tricking you to help you grow. So in my impression, once I realized that and I called it out, it was from the standpoint that the trickster was mirroring back to me all the aspects of myself that I had claimed to heal and I had stated that I had healed in my life. In essence, what I was going through was a final exam. And all of the tarot readings that I was watching, and shout out to Lynn because they were all Lynn's tarot, through Lynn's eyes. If you guys haven't checked him out, definitely check him out. So, definitely love him, and I love Draconic Priestess. So those are the two, and there's another lady named Molly. Unfortunately, I can't remember the channel name. It's something like Rose, Clearwater Rose, or something like that. I'm sorry, Molly. So I'll have to go back and look at that. But those are the three. But it was mainly through Lynn's eyes that I was watching his tarot readings, and there was a couple that I was watching from Draconic Priestess, and it was just like every single one that they were talking about, it hit on all of my old shadow aspects. And it really had me wondering there for a while. It's like, am I not as healed as I think I am? Like, am I the toxic person? Am I the toxic one in these dynamics? Like, is this really who I am and stuff? And it was just like, it really got and really messed with my mental for a while. And it wasn't until I started dealing with the car that things just started going crazy. And I'm just like, wait a minute. I've overcome a lot in the last year or two. Even though it's the quote unquote new year, the new year doesn't start until, February 17th, I believe it is. So we're winding down the year of the snake. I'm stepping out of my comfort zone with this, especially with something that I manifested with the universe. And the way I look at it is that the trickster's energy was in essence testing me on all these aspects, testing me on all the aspects that I had claimed that I had healed, because in essence it was meant to really show me how far I had come. Not that I still embodied those energies, but how far that I had come. But if I wasn't able to, I'm not going to say control my ego, but if I wasn't able to ground myself, my ego would run crazy and make me believe that I was still that person. I was still that toxic person. Because we still, even though we heal from those toxic patterns that we still have those thoughts from time to time. So the part that I had to be mindful of is because, say if I go out in an environment and I'm with someone, we're all human beings, and say that if you see somebody that's attractive, there's nothing wrong with saying that person's attractive. But there's another thing to be in an energy of lust and going after that person and trying to be with them because you just think they're so attractive that you just have to have them, so to speak. So it's just different things that's coming up that in readings and stuff, because one of the things that I always say is when I see a beautiful woman, or just beautiful human being, is that I remember that, especially if you know the Bible or anything about fallen angels and stuff, if you look at it, if you understand fallen angels, in essence, they had a high, lofty position, but the women and men on earth were so beautiful that they gave up their angelic position in order to come down and basically be with us, I guess you could say. So there's nothing. So I look at that from the standpoint, if you and I are so beautiful that we are tempting to angels and stuff, then there's nothing wrong with us admiring one another, but it's not being in lust, not being in certain patterns and stuff. So that's a whole nother subject. So I'm just getting off tangent, just using that from the standpoint of there were certain things in these readings that triggered me, but they were triggering the old me. And initially they were disheartening because they made me feel some kind of way that I was a different person than what I feel like I am present day. But as I started to recognize what was going on and that this was a trickster energy, every time that those instances came up, I was able to first ground myself, and then I was able to reclaim my energy. And I remember one of the things saying to myself, it really was my breakthrough, which sounds, and I even said it in a moment, it was sad, was that it was as if the trickster energy wanted me to think less of myself than what I was really deserving of, or think lowly of myself, that I wasn't capable of accomplishing anything. And I remember saying that that's where the trickster energy messed up, is because I never thought highly of myself in the first place. So how can you expect someone who never thought highly of themselves in the first place think low of themselves? Because I can understand, say if a person has a chip on their shoulder or they have an inflated ego and trickster energy is wanting to humble them, it may being a harder instance to humble somebody in that moment, or not harder instance, it may be a painful lesson for somebody who has a chip on their shoulder to learn to be humbled. But if a person who has been living humble their entire life, but a trickster energy is trying to humble, how can you humble someone who's already been humble their entire lives, so to speak? So, and that's just one way of looking at it, but it just got me to realize that I've never seen myself as someone great, someone intelligent, someone as smart, someone as attractive, insert whatever adjective you want into the mix. I never saw myself as anyone empowered, I guess you could say. So for a trickster energy to come in and want me to see myself as someone not empowered, like that's how I've saw myself my entire life, so to speak. So it just got me to see really how powerful I was in that moment and how much I had really changed, because you can't beat someone down that's already been used to being beaten down. I recognized that I was so used to losing that this trickster energy wanted me to revert back to that state of losing and thinking that despite all the things around me, the signs around me that showed me that this was aligned for me and my purpose, the trickster energy still wanted me to doubt myself. Because what did I do? I asked the universe to help me get this vehicle to prove to myself that I can do this business. The universe opened the doorway for me and basically gave me this vehicle. When I went and bought the vehicle, I didn't have the check. I got approved for the loan to get the vehicle, but I didn't have the check in my hand. When I went to the dealership was like, you don't need a check. You come here, sign the paperwork, and we'll let you drive the car off the lot. No check in hand. So I'm just like, I've never heard of that before, but hey, whatever. I'm not going to argue. So, but it was just things like that basically stacked up, that just kept stacking up. When I listed my vehicle on Turo, within the first 2 or 3 days, I had some very solid bookings. So, it was just things from the universe was showing me that this is aligned. I'm on my purpose. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. But it was like this trickster energy coming in, trying to get me to second guess myself, because it's like that last you're at that last stop before you break through that wall into their highest timeline, and it's that final test. And that's what I'm chalking it up to, is that final test to be like, hey, have you really put these things behind you? Are you really this new person that you claim that you are? Or are you still that same person, just kind of faking the funk, so to speak? And you know what? Once I called out the trickster energy, I rationalized in my head that I was stepping outside of my comfort zone, that I was following through on a manifestation, an intention that I set with the universe. I recognize that, yes, at some point I was this toxic person that these tarot readings were talking about, but I am no longer that person. I am Brandon. I am a healed version of Brandon. I was, like I said, toxic. I had bad traits. I didn't think long term when it came to certain things. It was very much what was pleasing in the moment, and forget everything else. And once I made that realization and I went through that conversation in my head, it's like that trickster energy basically left and departed. So, and one thing that kind of really struck me and confirmed that I was being watched in that moment, and it was a test. Whenever I got the car and I was leaving, I'm big on birds, so I look at my environment and what's going on, because you'd be surprised that, not to say every bird or everything in your environment, but because we're so wrapped up in our heads and we're so wrapped up in other things in our lives that we're not consciously aware of what's going on around us. So one thing that I do is I intentionally become consciously aware of what's in my environment, what's going on, especially in those things that happen that's like head scratchers and stuff. So, and I just remember once I really recognized that this was a trickster energy, or this is what was going on, I saw two ravens flying through the air, and it was like one raven kind of flew and perched up on a tree, and then another raven kind of flew and then perched up next to the other raven in a tree, and it was like it was just two ravens just sitting there, and I just felt like I was being observed. I was being watched, kind of like you're taking a final exam, the SATs or whatever exam you may be taking, and there's a proctor. There's someone in the room to making sure that you're not cheating, you're not doing anything else. And that's the feeling that I got when I saw those two birds, is that in essence the universe was watching me in this moment of what I was going to do and what was going on, and was I going to revert back to this this victim Brandon, or was I going to finally, or I don't say finally, but was I going to solidify this new Brandon, this new confident queen of, well, I guess you can say queen of swords, but queen of wands, energy, so to speak. This king of wands energy, this person that, is sovereign and grounded in themselves, or am I going to leak energy and revert to this victim mentality? So it really felt great to be able to recognize it, because when you're going through situations and you're going through things, especially if it seems chaotic in a moment, your thoughts really can get the best of you if you're a very emotional person like I was. So it felt great because it showed me how grounded I was in myself. So I'm an Aquarius. I have no real earth in my chart except for my Venus sign. It's Capricorn. I have a 10th house Capricorn placement. So I really don't have any earth in my chart called out directly, but as I'm learning that we really can embody any energy. So just because I don't have any earth in my chart, I'm really embodying Taurus energy and stuff right now. So my Chiron is in Taurus right now. So I would say, in essence, by me embodying that earth energy, that I have, or at least well underway of healing my Chiron placement. And so I just wanted to really come out and just tell my story as far as that's concerned, going through from the stage of setting an intent for a manifestation, getting the manifestation, going through the process of getting it ready for business, and then actually turning it over for its business use, and then all of the emotions that went along with stepping outside of your comfort zone. So my hope with this is for those that are going and on their healing journey, especially when you get to the point of your final exam and you're having a visit from your trickster energy to really test you to see if you've learned these lessons. The thing that helped me was really just grounding myself. I have a daily practice of meditation, and to me, it really came down to, like most people pray every day, no matter what was going on. I made sure that I made time to meditate, even if it was only 5 minutes. And so I've gotten out of that practice within the last month or so, and I would say that's part of it too, is that trickster energy. And I would say that's probably the start of it, really, is that's one thing that I've done, and that's really helped me with grounding myself, is having a daily meditation practice. There was one time that I did a meditation to where I visualized like roots growing out of my root chakra, basically my sacred space that I do meditate in. I visualize roots growing out of my root chakra, like around me, engulfing the whole entire room, and then like crawling underneath the door where I was at, and then basically encapsulated my whole entire apartment, my whole entire, my loft. And then once it encapsulated the whole entire loft, it went out the window and down the building, and then down to the ground, and then it dug down through the ground until it got to the core of the earth, so to speak. And it was almost like the core was just this big ball of energy and stuff, and it was just like my roots attached to that core, and then the energy from the core flowed back up through the roots, and it basically, like, it supercharged all the roots that had came from me, to where the room all of a sudden now was pulsing with whatever the color was. So I think at that time it was, I think the ball was like an orange, like an orangish color. But I want to say whenever the color came back up into the room, it was more like a greenish color. Like my roots was kind of like pulsating this greenish color. So, and I just remember coming out of that meditation, just feeling this sense of groundedness that I've tried that meditation before, but I've never felt the sense of groundedness that I felt when I came out of it. And it was almost like that was the missing piece to really ground me. And once I did that, I was physically grounded to Mother Gaia. And that's the sense that I would say, if you haven't done any kind of grounding meditation or anything, that I would definitely recommend doing that, because it will help you weather the storm and walk through the storm whenever it is getting crazy and chaotic there. Because that is what helped me in the moment, was getting grounded in myself. Just taking those deep breaths, four breaths in, a 6 count exhale, and just really getting into yourself and just be like, hey, this is a trickster energy. What are you trying to show me, and what is it I need to see? And as going through that, once I saw what I needed to see, have those realizations, like I said, the trickster energy left. I started, immediately after that, the next tarot reading I watched and stuff, it no longer was no longer being from I no longer felt like it was from the perspective of making me the toxic person in that dynamic. It reverted back to me being the person the reader was talking about, and then the other people that are surrounding me and stuff. So it was like the skies kind of parted, and I went back to my energy, and I was now out of this trickster energy. I mean, things are always going to go wrong and happen, or I should say it from that standpoint. The Bible says time and unforeseen circumstances will befall us all. So saying that to say that things will occasionally happen to us that are bad. It's not to say that that's a trickster energy or that's karma playing out, but it's just to say if you're stepping outside of your comfort zone when those things are happening, that in that instance, not letting it control you, but step back and step back, take a breath, see what's going on, and ask yourself, is this happening to me because I'm stepping outside of my comfort zone and it's trying to keep me quote unquote safe? Or is this because it's something that I really should avoid and it's the universe trying to protect me? So just ground yourself and talk with your team, and they will never guide you wrong. So it was definitely an epiphany moment for me, because I was in that moment, I was becoming a different version of myself. And it was as if, like, walking, for parents that have kids, I don't have kids and stuff, but anybody that has Facebook, when school is in session and stuff, you see kids kind of going in. You got some kids that are holding on to their parents when they're going in. You got some kids that just walk in straight without even looking back at their parents. And the way I see it is that was my moment of walking into pre-K that day, and my parent / trickster energy is testing me to see if I'm really ready, because I'm putting myself out there, and right now there may not be a lot going on, but at some point I know that others are going to start catching up to where I am. And there are times to where I get to certain points in my healing journey to where I'm not going to say I don't know what to do, but it's like, what's next? I've healed this. Okay, what's next? I've healed this. Okay, so what's next? So that's one thing that tarot really helped me out with, is it kind of gave me indications of areas where I could look into, and then I would start diving into those areas and doing that healing work. But it's like I've gotten to a point now to where I feel like I've done as much healing work as I can on myself at the level that I'm capable of doing it. So it's like, where do I go to from now? So it's looking like, there's a saying that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So, and that's the mindset that I'm in right now, is that, I'm a student. I feel like I'm ready, especially with going through this recent situation with the trickster energy trying to really get me to second guess myself. Because that's what I said. I was like, this energy, whatever's going on, is trying to get me to doubt myself. And it was like, as soon as I called it out, it dissipated and stuff. So just don't give up, family. Just know that when you are going through those ordeals and those trials, just know that it's for good, because you're becoming a version of yourself that you've never been before. And the world needs you, but it needs the real version of you. It needs the authentic version of you, just not somebody that's just playing the part and acting like it, because we have enough of those people in our life and our environment. They've messed so many people up. And this new era, this new season that we're going to, there's no more time for that. It's only up and away, as they say. So, so if it takes me being vulnerable, me being open and honest about my situation, my healing journey, to help others after me, whether people make fun of me, call me names, whatever, hey, it is what it is. The divine gave me thick skin for a reason. So if I can even help a couple of you, then that's worth it to me. And I can go to Anubis and have my heart weighed and know that I did all that I can to help society at that given moment. So, but all right, family. I'm looking at the clock. I've been talking for 49 minutes. I mean, hey, I can talk all day. So, especially when it's about helping other people and loving other people and just pouring back into them and stuff. So, I've learned to pour into myself, so my cup runs over. So now my hope is that as my cup overflows, some of that spills into you guys' cups and fills your cups up and helps you show you, and my example will show you how to fill your cup up. So just like my cup overflows and fills your cups start to overflow and fill the cups of those that are around you. And it's something that we do for one another. You know, it's a waterfall effect. So, and through that, eventually we will impact and affect the entire world. So, and if I could have a small hand in that, then that's all I can ask for. So, because this really is a paradise. We just allow people to control our perception of it in the moment, and the sooner we take that back, the sooner we can really enjoy this reality and this existence for what it really is. So, but all right, family, just know that I love you. I love you. I LOVE you so much. So if I could give you a hug, just know that I would. It's one thing that I definitely do love myself. So if you're watching this right now, just give yourself a hug. I can just feel, just by hugging myself like this, I can just feel the energy and just the warmth going through. So I'm just picturing in my head this green stream of energy going into the camera and just projecting love to you all. So if you have had a bad day, just give yourself a hug and just rock with me and just know that it'll be okay. We all have those times. We all have those days from time to time. Unfortunately, we can't control other people. And that's one thing I've learned, is that people's interactions with me is a reflection of what they're going through in their own lives at that given moment in time. So it's not a reflection of me and anything that I did to them or how I made them feel, but it's about what they're going through in that moment. So, just forgive them and just wish them well, and that whatever they're going through in that moment, that they find relief and they find comfort. So, but they can never shake us. They may shake us for a little bit, but just know we're grounded in who we are and what we're becoming. And that's shining light to those that don't have it or don't even think the light exists. We're filled with light, we're filled with emotions, we're filled with the energy that others need in this dire moment in our existence. Right? So just continue to spread it, family. Spread it always. I love you. I love you. I love you so much. Have a great day.